Well, we're checking everybody. It is a little bit of breaking news here on the Orange Bloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Jason Sucamel and DeAndre Moore. Oh, the long coveted DeAndre Moore has finally signed his letter of intent. I guess it's not that dramatic. It's just the day after signing day. But DeAndre Moore, officially a Texas Longhorn. Sucamel and I here to break down this signing, what it means for this recruiting class. But before we go into that, let me remind you, or at least tell you, that this video brought to you by Prime Shrimp, proud sponsor of the Crewcast, and today a proud sponsor of, we hope proud, of this breaking news segment. $20 off your first order. Just use that promo code OrangeBloods. Tell them who sent you. The best way to do that is to actually use the promo code OrangeBloods, and then you get the hookup for watching the video and get yourself some badass shrimp. I've heard nobody get shrimp from Prime Shrimp and then complain about it later. Nothing but happy customers. Jason, DeAndre Moore, he's a Texas Longhorn.
Yeah, how you described him, I said the patience testing DeAndre Moore is a Texas Longhorn, because this thing was a wild deal on Wednesday. Thursday, I mean, we can talk about it, but deadlines were given and nearly missed, and he almost lost his chance, and his window of opportunity was nearly closed, but we finally got a resolution. DeAndre Moore, former Louisville commitment, former Oklahoma commitment, commitment before being a Louisville commitment. That's been so long ago, I almost forgot about that. But now a Texas Longhorn signee, joins a Texas class. He's a 23rd high school member, right? And they got two portal players that Sark talked about, so he almost counts it as a 25-man class. But really good pickup for Texas. I mean, yeah, it was some headaches and banging their heads against the wall, I'm sure, and you and I banging our head against the wall waiting for this thing to become official, so we're not handcuffed to our computers waiting for it to pop. But glad to have it out of the way, and just a really good pickup for Texas from a really skilled receiver, a guy who can really stretch the field, work out of the slot, really versatile, do a lot of things for you. I've seen him in person a couple times at various 7-on-7 events. I'm trying to look. He's listed on Rivals 5.
I have all that pulled up.
About 190. Yeah, and that's probably, I mean, it's pretty accurate. I was going to say he's kind of like, he's not Xavier Worthy skinny, but he's not Mikel Harrison Pilot big either. But he's a pretty filled out receiver for a high school kid that can really do a little bit of everything for you at the receiver position.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I cut you off, and then that's not even what you were talking about. I was going to say, I'm looking at the instant analysis piece that I wrote for DeAndre Moore. So I have all of his rankings in front of me. Okay. The highest, ESPN's got him ranked number 77 overall nationally. Then 24/7 has him at 106 nationally. Rivals has him at 114 nationally. On3 has him at 196 nationally. I think what's most interesting is that if you look at the rankings from inside the state of California, he's regarded as somewhere between the 7th and 11th best player in the state of California across all agencies and services covering recruiting, which is, if we're talking about a top 10 kid in the state of California, that usually is an absolute take in the way that you'd talk about a kid from the state of Texas or the state of Florida. His 24/7 composite is 95th overall nationally and number 8 in California, Jason. And
because Rivals has him 11th in California, and you said he's 190 something on 3. They must be down on California kids or something.
Yeah, looking at the On3 rankings, they have to be, because they've got him 11th in California, but almost 196, almost 200.
Yeah, interesting.
And I would normally expect the top 10 kids in California, almost all of them, to be inside the national 100. So, I really can't speak to what On3 is doing, but clearly not as high on the state of California as you would expect in most years. Jason, the bottom line on this one for me, and I'm just checking to make sure, okay, we're good. Nothing new has happened in the last 5 seconds since we started recording this video. Steve Sarkisian really wants DeAndre Moore. And, he made that tweet earlier in the day. And this is a guy that's been a big-time prospect for a long time. Mm-hmm. I think Steve Sarkisian has been recruiting him for a long time. And he has the one thing that we know Steve Sarkisian wants in a wide receiver is the ability to stretch the field. And I think when you talk about the patience involved, when you talk a little bit about the 48-hour drama of Georgia and Louisville and Texas, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a guy that we know he wants to stretch the field. We know that that's where he had the most success with Alabama is when he had a bunch of fast guys that the other team just couldn't completely wrap their heads around and their coverage around. And he needs more of that kind of game breaking speed from the wide receiver position in general. Worthy does it. Brennan Thompson can do it. Ryan Niblett in this recruiting class can do it, but so can DeAndre Moore. And it speaks to what Steve Sarkisian, I think, values more than anything else at the position as a receiver is the ability to just blow by coverages.
Yeah, and people say, well, where's the big receiver in this class? I mean, Jonte's 6 foot. He can kind of give you some of that on the outside, but there's not the 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" receiver. We've seen Sark at Alabama. He didn't need those guys. I mean, he just likes to get guys in space and, like you said, take the top off of defense, or really, make short catches and turn them into big games.
Yeah.
And I mean, Xavier Worthy can do that for you. We didn't see a lot of it from Worthy last year, of course, but we know he has it in him. And you're right, Moore's been on the radar. That it was an Instagram post he made earlier today, and it was an Adam Gorney from Rivals. He reposted something Adam had posted, and it was when he was in 8th grade. He picked up Alabama and Georgia. And I'm trying to remember, man. I first saw Moore. I was at a Las Vegas, a 7-on-7 event, and it was 2 winters ago, so almost 2 full years ago, and he was already a big time prospect then. And he's a kid just exudes confidence, and and I talked to Gorney about him, and I had a quote in our commitment story. He's like, he's not coming to Texas or anywhere else to play second fiddle. He's going to want to play early. He's going to want the ball in his hands, and he's not going to back down from anybody on that roster, including a guy like Xavier Worthy. So he's got that mindset you have to be successful. Now he's walking into a wide receiver room with some pretty good talent in it, including Jonte Cook and Ryan Niblett in this class. But he's an early enrollee, should be here in January in Austin. So I think it's a good pickup, and I think he'll have a chance to be an early contributor for Texas.
It's interesting. In watching his film from this season, his senior year film on Huddle, he's basically used in 2 ways. They'll throw him the ball short, little screens, maybe a skinny post, get him the ball and let him just try to run by everybody, or he just runs by everybody and they throw it deep. And there's not a lot. I don't think he arrives as a guy who I don't think he's going to have the route tree down left and right. I mean, you certainly can't see it based on the way he's used at the high school level, that there's nuance to his ability to run short, intermediate, deep, and all of the various routes inside of those levels of the defense. But he's fast. And the fact that he's here in the spring gives him an opportunity. I feel like you and I've done several videos in the last couple of weeks where we constantly reinforce that there's a DJ Campbell rule unofficially, right? Like, ultimately, Cole Hudson is the starter at that position at guard this year because he comes in and has a longer offseason, is in the offense a little bit longer than Campbell was. And that 2 times the set of practices that he had to work with going into the year really made a difference. It's altered my line of thinking with regards to, can you make a first-year impact at Texas or not? DeAndre Moore, and we saw Brennan Thompson not get on the field. And if you're talking about guys that DeAndre Moore potentially profiles as, he's got some Brennan Thompson in him, although not that fast. He's not quite as fast as Brennan Thompson, but the ability to be here this spring and have 30-plus practices when it's all said and done before the first game gives a guy with high ambitions and the yearning to get on the field early a chance to do so.
Yeah, and one thing Sark talked about at his press conference is he likes that they're bringing in guys from winning programs. Well, listen, he's coming in from Bosco. He's done it against good competition. They play Mission Viejo and Mater Dei and the big boys out in California. So when you look at his film and you see him being ultra productive, and running by a lot of guys. He's not doing it against scrub competition. This isn't him running, 2A football. I mean, I believe they're the national champs in all of high school football. Bosco is so, and they did it by playing some really good competition out in the West Coast and even on a national level at some point. So, getting him in early, I think, is big, and he's a proven commodity who's done it at a high level against really, really good competition. So, is he Brendan Thompson fast? Like you said, no, I mean, I don't. There's probably maybe not a guy on the team that's Brendan Thompson fast, right? But he comes in. I think he can do a little bit different things. I think maybe he's a little bit better after the catch than Brendan Thompson. Body's a little more filled out, probably a little more college ready than a guy like Brendan Thompson was coming out of high school. But I can
more battle tested.
Absolutely more battle tested. Yeah. So we're talking about two completely different levels of high school competition. So really good pickup, and him coming in early. It's hard to say. Jonte will be there early, and Texas should have a pretty talented receiver room around him. But would it shock me if he's a guy that's in the rotation to some degree as a freshman? Not one bit.
That's what he's coming here for. And, this is a guy that Texas was able to already talk to from an NIL perspective. I mean, he comes in with big expectations. And I think whereas a lot of people are frustrated today that this took a little bit of time to completely unfold, in the grand scheme of things, it's 24, 28, 30 hours later when he's here in practice. And if he's making plays, none of that stuff is going to matter at all. And everybody will forget the little bit of angst it took to get him here. I think from a 30,000 foot views perspective of this, it gives Texas their third wide receiver in this class. You mentioned it, Jonte Cook and Ryan Niblett both in this group. But when we were talking about grades, or you and Cole were talking about grades on the Crewcast recently, you were in the B range, partly because they only had two in this class.
Low B range. Yeah. Had a low B. I mean, good talent, but I was like, only two guys. Yeah, this certainly changes that. Yeah.
So this gives them three. Mm-hmm. And then we know they're going to do something in the portal at the wide receiver position. That was always going to happen with or without DeAndre Moore. Maybe if he doesn't sign, they bring in an extra guy. I still think they could sign two wide receivers in the portal when it's all said and done. DeAndre Moore's commitment today gives them 10 on scholarship, and that includes Jordan Whittington in that group, which we think Jordan's coming back, but that one's kind of gone a little back and forth over the course of the last month. 15, 16 is probably too many, but I think they'll think that 10 is too low. Especially they don't have 10 proven guys. Right. So they needed this from a numbers standpoint. They needed to add another big-time high school guy, and they did. So, as one of the post-signing day subplots, the ability to boost the wide receiver room, which kind of a sneaky need in retrospect. I don't know, way back in the beginning that we were thinking that wide receiver was such an important need, but by signing day, it certainly was.
Yeah, and nice feather in the cap for Brennan Marion too. Let's talk about that. I mean, he's got two Rivals 100 commitments or signees now, and DeAndre Moore, who's just outside the Rivals 100. So pretty good first cycle. I mean, Brennan Marion. There have been times at times this recruiting cycle, his first recruiting cycle in Austin, he's kind of taken some shots from people. He's missed on a couple guys. Maybe Jalen Hale or someone. People fret over the ones they miss. If you're going to do that, you got to celebrate the ones he's got. I had him at a B- because, as you said, the numbers I thought indicated they would need 3, maybe even 4 in this class. So when they were sitting at 2, I was like, that's a really good 2-man class, but it didn't meet their needs. Well, now they've got 3. They've got really good 3 really talented players. If I'm grading this wide receiver recruiting haul, I'd probably give it an A- at this point. Listen, I'm a hard grader. I always am. I said the only way you can get an A+ for me is if you've got an Arch Manning type, a bona fide 5-star. Maybe Jonte Cook winds up being a 5-star, and this turns into an A+ class. But I think I'd give Brennan Marion an A-, maybe even a solid A for his first recruiting cycle in Austin. So nice start for Brennan Marion.
Yeah, I think I'm probably maybe in an A. I'm kind of between an A and an A-, and I do think you and I are tough graders, but we've seen big wide receiving classes, successful wide receiver classes in the past. You're right. I've got Jonte Cook as a 5-star, but most people don't at this point. He's still in the super blue chip range, which makes him an unbelievable prospect, and maybe weirdly, underrated. I don't want to say underrated, but just in the context of this Texas recruiting class, I think we're at a point where it's like in the summer we would have thought of Jonte Cook as a headliner, and he kind of is. But if we were talking about the 5 guys that people are talking about the most, it might be Arch, it's Anthony Hill, it's CJ Baxter. Those seem like the top 3 guys. And then Colton Vasek is in the mix. And obviously Malik Muhammad might be in that top 3, top 4. And then it's probably Jonte Cook and Colton Vasek and a few others.
You're kind of splitting hairs after the first 2, right?
Yeah.
After Arch and Anthony Hill, you could take the next 4 probably in any order, and I really wouldn't argue with you.
I think Jonte Cook arriving in the spring is an underrated subplot to this recruiting class and immediate impact. Ryan Niblett, I think, is raw. I think DeAndre Moore is probably more ready, no pun intended, but he's probably more immediately ready to contribute than Ryan Niblett is. But both of those guys have like rocket launchers on their back. I mean, they can absolutely fly. I think for me, they've got 2 super blue chips and a borderline super blue chip. But I do love Ryan Niblett more than most people. It's a really good wide receiver class. Is it great? I don't know that I'd quite go that far. But it gets supplemented with what happens in the portal. And I guess the last thing I'll say on the video, and I'll give you the chance to kind of close us out with a final thought on the DeAndre Moore commitment. All of this, the larger picture is Texas isn't done at the wide receiver position. And DeAndre Moore is a really nice piece of the puzzle that they're adding. This isn't Sukamel and I doing a commitment video after signing day on a guy that doesn't have a chance to be a big-time guy. I mean, we may look back in 3 or 4 years from now and really say, it's a good thing they were patient, because this guy ended up being a major integral part of the first teams that Texas has in the SEC. And so, again, I would just warn everybody, be happy about this. This is a good pickup for Texas. It was a little more complicated in the end than maybe Texas thought it might be, the fact that we're doing this video on a Thursday instead of a Wednesday. But there's a whole lot more good in this situation than bad by a lot. And Steve Sarkisian's a happy camper. And if you're a Texas fan and your head coach is really happy about getting a guy, then you should probably be happy as well. That means he has a plan for this guy.
Yeah, and like you and Sark and Brendan Marion and probably the fan base, I'm just glad it's over, man, because I got Christmas shopping I got to do. And you and I were talking today. I was like, I got to make a Walmart run before this freeze gets in. And I did, thankfully, and got it out of the way. I was like, I may be doing our instant analysis video from the aisles of Walmart. So I'm glad it's over.
We missed that just by a bit. It almost happened.
Not by much, but listen, Wednesday was exciting for Texas. Hey, that gave us something to talk about on Thursday, right? And it's nice to have a resolution. And you know what? I'll say this as a little teaser before we sign off. They're not done with this class. I mean, I think we'll be doing another one of these videos in a couple weeks, talking about some other stuff. So, so then we're not done with these instant analysis, immediate breakdown videos. I think Texas has more in the works coming up. Not in this window, this early signing window, which closes Friday night, but people won't have to wait too long.
Yeah, no doubt about that. For myself and Jason Sukamel and Prime Shrimp, again, promo code OrangeBloods, $20 off your first order, but you got to make sure you use the promo code. Go to Prime Shrimp today. Sounds like a hell of a Christmas gift. I know it's late, but you can have some shrimp show up later if it's the right shrimp. And I would argue that Prime Shrimp is absolutely the right shrimp. I need to stop saying shrimp. It's turned out to be a word harder for me than I would have anticipated. You guys have a great rest of the night. Early happy holidays and Merry Christmas and all that stuff. But we will, we're going to go get some shopping done. You guys have a great night. Later.